Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below this video once it's rendered. Most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Ranty Flat Earth, Sleeping Warrior, Spurs Chemo, and The Plain Truth. Good to have you all.
Yo.
G'day.
What's interesting is I've just pressed home on YouTube because I didn't get a notification. Now normally you're at the top left, live, but for whatever reason you're not showing in my feed right now.
I never get notifications of Nathan.
Nope. No notice. In fact, I actually got a notification for Simon Die.
For no Simon. Let's not talk about him.
Hey, Haunted House. How you doing?
Hey, Nathan Oakley.
Yo, Haunted.
What's happening, guys? Hey, what's up, Mr. Riley?
How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah. How are you guys?
All good, man. You must have wet the bed. What time is it for you? 2, 12, 1, 12, 11, 10, 9?
9 o'clock.
So you just got out of bed on a Saturday morning, eh?
Yeah.
Cool.
Was it 14 o'clock over there?
Yeah,
Yep.
14, yeah.
That's a nice picture.
That's some bees, that is.
What? Oh, I thought that was someone's feed.
Let's get housekeeping out of the way, Nath.
Yeah. It's the first time we've had Jonathan to do this, so if you don't know what we're doing, don't worry about it. You'll pick it up as we go along. So, any signs of Earth curve?
None at all. Actually, there is a shout for Earth curve.
Ace?
Have you seen Robbie Davidson's latest videos on the Flat Earth Conference in Alberta in Canada?
Probably. What was it about? What particular one?
Mark Sargent gave a speech. It was his opening speech. And
Yes,
to be honest, I think it was Mark's best speech that I've ever seen him do.
I agree.
What I'm going to do, actually, I want to present this, Nath. Let me screen share because I want to raise awareness to this bozo that's giving Mark hassle for a video in which he had absolutely nothing to do with. Present me, please, sir.
Yeah, you're up.
If you haven't seen this speech by Mark Sargent on Robbie Davidson's channel, go and check it out. I think this is his best speech so far, his best speech to date, because he wasn't doing it in a comical, jovial, light-hearted way. He was doing it serious, and I like seeing it, Mark, when he's being serious. But anyway, I digress. There's an idiot in this thread here, and it's not me, it's the other guy. Mark's put in the comments, I love Flat Earth, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a bloke in here called Paul Julien. So let's just see, is he a sock account? Yeah, he could be, probably, maybe not. But he is, oh, where's it gone? Oh, please don't tell me I got rid of that accidentally. Where's it gone? No.
Slick. Very slick.
Yeah, that was terrible, wasn't it? Right, let's go back.
Terrible.
Damn it. I'll have to go back to that and get that again. Hang on. Celebrate truth. I was just looking at that retard's exponential growth in like 5 days. He seems to have now got 30,000. Anyway, right. So my slickness has let me down. Right. So epic speech. There's basically two blokes in this conversation, and one of them's a retard. The other one's me, and that's not the retard. It's the other bloke. So Mark's comment. We've got this guy, Paul Julien, and basically what he's doing is he's trying to attack Mark saying that you've ignored this every single time I have directly replied to you. And he's basically saying one of Sandra's videos. So when you open up the link that is demanding that Mark address, which bear in mind Mark's not made any claims of, it's actually on Jamie's channel, but it's of Sandra's video. And it's one of her infamous Isle of Man ones from Blackpool, right? 70 miles, shouldn't be seen. None of it. Now, Paul's argument is that the turbines are clearly showing curvature of the Earth. So if that's true, then it would also mean that the mountain that's in the background that is evidenced on screen should not be seen, because this mountain is significantly behind the curve. Not just a little bit, loads. So you shouldn't see any of it. Now, you're going to all argue, yeah, okay, a bit of refraction brings it back, but he's claiming that the turbines are proving that there's curvature of the Earth, but failing to address the mountain in the background that is totally destroying it. So my position is simple. It's like, well, all right, let's say that this is curvature. Why is the mountain seen? Alternatively, this is an atmospheric effect, but we're still seeing the mountain in the background. So whatever's going on here, if you're going to claim that the turbines are curvature, you have to acknowledge what's going on with the mountain.
Sorry, I've got to stop you. We've got to stop saying it's an atmospheric effect. It's not. So what you're seeing is a narrowing of the viewing angle to those items beyond the resolution that you can see. So what you are effectively seeing at the bottom of those turbines is the stuff at the bottom half of the pole is too small to see. Now, as you look up that pole, you've got a wider viewing angle to the top of the turbine, wider than you have at the bottom. Therefore, you lose it from bottom up. That's how things disappear into the distance. You can't have the beach because it's too narrow a viewing angle in most instances. So it's not an atmospheric effect.
Could we not solve this issue if we had somebody wear those turbines? If we had someone at the base of one of those, basically aiming the person who took this photo, wouldn't that be an interesting experiment? That way we could prove, because the person by the turbine would see that person. You know what I mean?
There's an example I give, Jonathan, which is to say that let's pretend that at that turbine you've got a pair of shoes, right? And you lay them at that turbine. Pretend it's not water, but the conditions are as they are. But you can physically stand on the water. So we're all Jesus for this example. So you put your shoes at the bottom of the wind turbine. You start walking backwards. Now, eventually, you will reach the point where it's a couple of pixels in your camera, those shoes. Then you'll go back a bit further and it's 1 pixel. Then you'll go back a bit further and it disappears completely from view because it's beyond the angular resolution. However, if somebody then walks into frame and puts on those shoes, that's not to say that you haven't still got the wider viewing angle to the top of that person's head, showing you everything of that person but the shoes. You will. And in this instance, we're seeing everything but the shoes of the turbine because the viewing angle is just too narrow to the bottom of them. So it's not an atmospheric condition. I'm sorry to jump all over you about this, Anthony.
No, it's okay. My point was that whatever's going on here, and I'm happy to say that I don't know, but what I can say is that if we live on a sphere, we should not see the mountain at all in the background. Not even the tippy tops of it. None of it. Because the elevation that she's at is below the bulge. The bulge in the heart, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I've invited him to come on the show, so we'll wait. Hopefully he'll join. He won't join because he's a keyboard warrior, but he claims that this is proving the curvature of the Earth. I claim it's showing anything but that. So in answer to your question, there is a claim for curvature, but he's just being optimistic. So let's see if he joins.
Well, it's not curving. That's not curvature. That's obstruction.
Let me ask you guys a question. Hopefully I'm going to bring something to the table that maybe hasn't been said. But as an experiment, like when would being on a spherical object actually matter? Like, in other words, if the Earth started shrinking, or take the moon, for instance, something supposedly a lot smaller, when would you start to worry about falling off of it? Or when would you have to start worrying about, in a tactile kind of way, like moving forward and backwards, like moving around and actually experiencing the curve? You know what I mean? Because right now, Earth is so big that the Glovers kind of get away with the fact that we're never really going to experience a hypothetical curve. But when do you think it would come into account? You know what I mean?
immediately.
Yeah, that's the exact opposite question that I've had from the beginning, but it's reversed. So the question becomes, at what point when you, so if we look at a merry-go-round, which is a small demonstration of centrifugal force, at what point, if you extend that device and make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, at what point will you stop feeling centrifugal force?
Right. I guess it would have to be the reference.
Well, you wouldn't. It would get worse because its tangential speed would increase as the radius increases as an exponential function of. It's one of the biggest ball Earth killers, but they refuse to accept it because they say it's still only one revolution a day, Riley. Yeah, but that revolution based on the size of the radius makes it thousands and thousands of miles an hour. That's fast. We should feel that.
Well, not necessarily. I don't think so. But then again, it's the whole idea of throwing that idea itself that we're moving at all into the mix is wrong. It's just irresponsible because there's no need for it.
You don't think you'd feel
there's no need to
an hour tangential speed?
Can you guys hear me?
Not without a reference.
Well, the reference.
You know what I mean? Not without. That's the problem with all this space measurement stuff. There's no reference point.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Chopper, we can't hear you. Everyone's just ignoring
There's
you.
never any reference point to get like an idea of what's going on. Like, look at Take Back Space. He does these great streams, and as close as he gets to the sun, to the moon, you still really don't have an idea of what size are these crater-looking things. These whatever they are. We'll call them craters for lack of terminology. You know, is it a school bus, a backyard, a swimming pool, a lake?
When you say about not having a reference plane for the tangential speed, do you remember when you rode a push bike when you were a kid, and when you got a brand new bike, if you got a posh one, there'd be a little sticker on the hub, and as you were cycling with your hands on the handlebars, you could look down at your hub, and you'd see the sticker going round dead slow. You were going dead fast, but the sticker on the inside of the hub was going really, really slow, and you could watch it going round dead slow. It was almost mesmerizing. If you didn't watch where you're going, you would end up crashing. But it's the same effect on the Earth. If the Earth's spinning even at just one revolution per day, the further the height, the bigger that radius. You say you need a reference point, but if you were on a roundabout and you didn't have any vision, you were blind, you would know straight away that you were moving, even at a low speed.
The other thing is we don't go from a stop to a start. We're already moving.
Bearing in mind that gravity is the so-called weakest force.
Hold on. Sorry to jump in. Sorry. Yeah, we do. So we are traveling in one direction around the sun according to the heliocentric model, and we are turning in the opposite direction on the Earth. As we go from midday to midnight, there would be a change in speed.
Yeah, we should definitely feel that.
Yeah.
How so?
Somehow or another.
Because you're traveling around the sun, yeah?
Right.
And then when your orbit is going in that same direction as that motion around the sun, then you are effectively adding to that speed of that direction. And then when you go in the opposite direction to the orbit around the sun, you're essentially negating that speed, reducing it off the overall speed that you travel around the sun. So there's about, I think it's a 200 mile an hour difference. Ute, believe it or not, did a video on this literally the other day. So check out YouTube, YUTEHUBE, I think is the spelling of his channel name. But he did a video on exactly this. So you've got a significant change in directional speed, and change in direction itself. You're effectively on a waltzer. That's the closest analogy. It's not like a merry-go-round. It's a waltzer. You're spinning on the Earth. It's just nonsense. I hate detailing heliocentric.
It's like complements the centrifugal force. Gotcha.
And can I just add? Sorry, the ring laser gyro and the fiber optic gyros do not detect that swinging motion every 12 hours. It's not there. Go on.
I just posted the image that Ute put out regarding that matter. It's in the Google chat.
This is part of the reason why Chris Monk had a fallout with FE Core, because on the one hand, Chris Monk believes that the fog gyro, the fiber optic gyro, was showing the rotation of the Earth. Well, if that's true, then where was the slingshot action, which is, like Nathan correctly points out, every 12 hours there's a phase shift. You would be going with the rotation, the orbit of the Earth around the sun, and then you'd be going against it, with it, and then against it. And you would see that every single 12 hours because part of it would tip over that rotation point, and we would see it. Ring laser gyros don't do it. Fog laser gyros don't observe it. Yet, for some reason, Chris thinks that the rotation of the Earth was being demonstrated, and ignoring the fact that the orbit of the sun part, which should be demonstrable by the sensitivity of these fiber optic gyros, wasn't doing it. So on the one hand, he accepted the orbit, the rotation, but rejected the lack of evidence for the orbit. Although he did argue that it supports geocentricity, but that's a different point.
Well, what we fail to understand is that gravity is not only the strongest, weakest force, it is also the smartest and trickiest force.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the argument with the gravity thing is that if you're going to believe that there is something there in addition to the force that we all observe naturally, density of an object, you've got to prove it, right? You've got to produce some evidence of it. And at the end of the day, if you can't produce evidence to support your assertion, he who produces evidence, he who does not produce evidence can be dismissed without evidence too. It's the application of Hitchens' razor. So Occam's razor is the one that states with the least amount of assumptions, that's the one that's most likely to be true. Hitchens' razor is the one that says, well, he who asserts without proof can be dismissed without proof.
The problem is science is bought and paid for. So if the proof doesn't work out for somebody and make somebody money, then it's going to be judged upon as in whether or not it's useful or not. You know, because I mean, what do we do with all this proof? Who do we take it to? And when we take it to that person, we're assuming that they're now the authority. When, you know, things that are self-evident can only really be appreciated by the person, you know, by an individual. That's why this whole idea of the Earth spinning isn't self-evident. You know, you're primed to believe and to think that the Earth is spinning, but no one would ever conceive of it. No one would ever think the Earth is moving. There's absolutely no reason to think about it, even consider it. Or the Earth is sphere. I mean, I think the problem we all are facing is that there's some error in assuming the entirety of the Earth as it is. You know what I mean? There's some flaw in doing that. Something stopping us. I don't think it can be, you know, I mean, I know as far as we're concerned, that's what I say. I say, as far as I'm concerned, the Earth is as flat as, it's as flat as I can see. And I've only experienced a flat level plane. Earth is always beneath me, wherever I go. You know, it exists on screen, it exists on paper as a sphere. But that's the only, you know, that's the only time. And I've come up with this question. Instead of getting people to prove things, like how does anyone verify the distance from Earth to the sun?
Have you been keeping up to date with the flat Earth debate? We addressed this point specifically the other day.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Well, we had Jimmy on, and he was asked by D Marble, "Can you name who it was that measured the distance to the sun?" He said, "Loads of people have done it." He says, "Oh, I name 5," and then they named 4, and then Jimmy responded by saying, "Well, it was Cassini, and it was a guy called Christian Huygens." And when he said that, I jumped on it because I knew that Christian Huygens made an assumption when he calculated the distance to the sun. The assumption was that he assumed that Venus was the size of Earth, and for the purposes of his calculations, that was the actual size that he used. That then brings you to trigonometry. Trigonometry relies on having 3 known values when calculating the distances. You have to have either 2 angles and a length, or you have to have 2 lengths and an angle, but you need to have 3. And if you have the actual size of Venus, and then you have the angle that you observe, the perceived angle size of, you can then work out, if you do a bit more work, you can work out the distance to it, but it's based on the assumption that it's the size of Earth. Now that's a problem, and Jimmy wouldn't accept it. So basically what we realized is that the distance of 93 million miles to the sun, as measured and as calculated by Christian Huygens, when he was applying the transit of Venus, and Kepler's 3rd law on interplanetary motion, is flawed, fundamentally flawed, because if you assume that Jupiter's the same size as Earth, then that rescales the whole of the solar system. If you assume that Mars is the same size as Earth, that'll rescale the whole size of the solar system. But then Jimmy said, well, how far out was he? And then Travis raised a valid point. Well, what's it being measured by? What's the comparison? Because are you now saying that you now know the transit of Venus? It's still based on the presupposition or the assumption that Venus is the same size of Earth.
And
nobody knows that that's true.
Can you just clarify that point, Anthony? That you're actually what we've actually found out is that this guy, in one of his one of the three things that he needs to put in, one of the inputs, one of the measurements, these calculations he needs to put in was a guess, a pure guess.
Well, he assumed that Venus was the same size as Earth.
Yeah, he assumed it was but it was a guess as well.
Was a
it's
guess.
Also referred to as a guess.
Yeah, it was a guess. And Rumpus would argue that that's close enough. Well, no, not really. It's still a guess.
So essentially, he's looked at a light in the sky and said, I can see that light in the sky, and I'm going to say that's the same size as the Earth. And if I do that, then I can do a trigonometry calculation and work out the distance between the Earth and the Sun.
Well, there's a bit you miss out. So, yes, he does say Venus is the same size as Earth. Assuming that Earth is a sphere with a radius of...
Yeah.
You missed that bit out. So, yeah, he's also assuming he's standing on a sphere with the presupposition that he's standing on a sphere. And then he's got his measurement of that sphere and then said that there light in the sky is the same size as this presupposed sphere that I could be standing on. And I'm going to say I am standing on. And that light's the same size as this sphere with this radius. It's now our sister planet.
Yeah, so if you pre-assume that Venus is the same size of a pre-assumed Earth, then you have a scaled solar system, right? Not just a scaled solar system, but you've got a quantified scaled solar system, which is our point. But the ballers ignore this because they think that this is somehow explainable because they said, oh, well, if you didn't have to blah, blah, blah. But we're waiting for somebody to come back with us for the reasons for this. But the bottom line is this, that there was a pre-assumption based on Venus being the same size as Earth. And as Nathan correctly points out, Earth was pre-assumed to be based on the same size of a radius. And the perfect guy to explain all this nonsense has just joined the hangout. Hey, welcome, Rumpus.
Welcome.
So what can you do for us today? Are you going to tell us how they measured the distance to the sun?
Yeah.
Go on then, measured being the key word.
Right, before we do that, measured. If I were to ask you how tall a tree was, would you accept a measurement of me using trigonometry? Say, for instance, if I were 100 feet from the tree and I walked up to the base of the tree and established 100 feet and measured that.
Well, when I got asked
hold on, let me finish my sentence.
No, I would rather a literal measurement.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, hold on. That's why I'm trying to establish whether you'll accept calculations. That's what I'm trying to sort out.
Not really.
Well, let me pose a question.
A measurement will accept.
One at a time.
Listen.
Right, let me pose. I've got 10 more seconds on this, Anthony, and then you can answer me. So you're 100 feet from a tree. At the point of 100 feet away, you make an angular observation of the angular size of the tree, and using basic trigonometry, you can then work out how tall the tree is. Would you accept that as a measurement of the height of the tree?
Yes, because you know two known values. You know
Excellent.
Two values. You know them implicitly.
Excellent.
You know
So by comparison, what we're now going to have from you, Rumpus, presumably, is the distance to the sun, so we can work out how big the sun is. And you'll have an exact feet and inches measurement for the distance to the sun, right?
Let me finish. Right,
you don't think you're reaching just a little bit with that one?
Here we go. So using radar, or you can use the transit of Venus.
Hold on. Sorry, when we were measuring the tree, you gave it us in feet and inches. Presumably, we'd run a tape measure between us and the tree, right?
Well, you could do that with a laser measuring device.
Oh, you didn't mention that. Oh, you didn't mention that when you talked about it. If you'd have said, well, we're going to fire a laser at the tree, I probably wouldn't have said yes, Rumpus.
Wouldn't have said yes.
Hold on, Rumpus. Listen, I know what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Well, I didn't finish my sentence to the point.
Before we get to that part, I just want to address the part that you've said already.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a reach to actually assume the distance of the sun the way you would assume the...
You don't assume it. You don't assume. There's no assumptions involved.
Well, you're not making a literal calculation. You're not making a measurement.
There's no assumption. Sorry. Will we be measuring... Sorry, I just need to ask a quick question. So will this laser or radar be travelling through the medium of space to do this measurement by any chance, Rumpus?
Correct.
All right. Can you prove that we can have the pressurised system that I'm currently breathing next to a lower pressurised system or vacuum? Can you demonstrate that, please?
I could do, but that's not really relevant to the point.
We've just said that we are going to be doing it through an assumed medium of space. So I want to know that the air that I breathe... Sorry, shut up, Rumpus. Shut up.
Right,
shut up. If you're going to assume a medium of space, I want you to prove, first and foremost, that we can have the gas pressure that I'm currently breathing next to the vacuum you're going to claim this measurement will be done in.
No, you can't have the gas pressure you're breathing in next to a vacuum. That's correct, no.
Oh, so how do we have that then?
Because it very gradually tails off as it goes up.
No, sorry, at the top level.
Well, the top level, there's almost no pressure. There's next to nothing.
Yes, sorry, almost no pressure. What's it pressing on?
It's being attracted to the centre of the Earth.
Sorry, what's it pressing on? It's expanding in all directions. It is subject to entropy. What's it pressing on?
Well, it's being attracted to the centre of the Earth. And therefore
not attracted. Listen to the words I use. It's gas pressure. I want to know at the top what it's pressing on.
On the other molecules below it.
Sorry, at the top. At the top, not below it, above it.
Well, it's oscillating around because it's hot. It therefore exerts a gas pressure.
Sorry, what's it pressing on?
Sorry?
What's it pressing on at the top?
The other molecules.
At the top layer before the vacuum, it can't be pressing on the vacuum on molecules. There's a vacuum there. So at that layer, where there's gas pressure, what's it pressing on at the top?
Well, A, it doesn't have to press on anything. B, the rare...
Oh, sorry, you just asserted that a vacuum doesn't need to press on something. I'd like you to demonstrate that.
Okay, well, I don't have...
You're just stuttering and mumbling. You've just asserted that it doesn't need to press on something to have pressure, right?
Well, it depends...
No, you're stuttering again. I'll say it a third time. You've just asserted that it does not need a lid. Show that to me.
Correct.
Show it me.
Okay.
Don't just assert it. Show me, Rumpus. Show me a vacuum chamber without a lid, please.
Right, okay. Okay, let me finish my sentence.
No, you will now back up your assertion that you don't need a bloody lid on a vacuum chamber because it's an imbecile statement that you've made. So you're not going to get to ask any bloody questions. You're going to show me...
I'm not asking a question.
Shh.
I'm answering your question.
Show me a vacuum without a lid.
Right, let's see that. Let's see it.
Jesus Christ, what a tosser. Right.
Sorry, what did you just call me?
Called you a tosser.
Right, then get out.
You wanker.
Oh, God. Eventually,
Rumpus doesn't have a vacuum without a lid because that is an impossibility. He will never, ever show anybody a vacuum with gas pressure next to it. Again, because it's an impossibility. We have entropy. That will never happen. At that point, Rumpus is screwed. And all he's going to do is ad hom me. So if anybody wants to bitch and moan for kicking Rumpus out when he starts calling people tossers, when he's been asked a simple question, to back his assertion that you don't need a bloody lid on a vacuum.
I mean, Rumpus, when are you going to admit that it's really difficult to prove your model? And that at some point, you just got to like say, hey, you know.
I want to shout out to Arwin. So yesterday we had this conversation off air. Now I did actually re-up this on the main channel by accident and labelled it subscribe to my backup channel, but you can check it out on either of the two channels, Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980. And the argument was essentially around the measurement of the distance to the moon. And Arwin was saying, well, you can smash that by debunking the technology they're using. And I said, no, you debunk the medium that they're going to measure through. If they're going to assume that you're measuring through the vacuum of space, they must first demonstrate that what I experience here on Earth, gas pressure, can have a vacuum next to it, which is what the heliocentric system demands. So if he can't prove that, then he's not going to be measuring through that medium. So his stuff immediately becomes rendered useless, as does anything that references space. So if you want to debunk anything where they say, I've got a picture of Earth from space, I can measure the distance to the moon, I know the satellite's up there, really? What, up in the vacuum of space? Well, I've got gas pressure here, it's self-evident, I breathe it. So if you show me that next to a vacuum, and you'll have what Rumpus did, the net result being him calling me a tosser, rather than showing me a vacuum without a lid, which he's never going to show me.
Well, one thing they always say is that the atmosphere itself that we live in, that, you know, the very, very top of it, it's almost no pressure at all, yeah? Almost non-existent. But what they forget then to remember is that the vacuum of space is still at full force.
It's a negative. It's a negative system, so it's going to flow from the higher pressure system to the lower pressure system. Obviously, that's what entropy is. But they say, oh no, it just gets less and less and less and less, and eventually we have a vacuum. It's like, well, show us that then. If it's a vacuum or near vacuum, a low pressure system, show me a high pressure system next to a low pressure system without a barrier. Oh, I can't do that.
There's no gradients of a vacuum. A vacuum is just a vacuum. That's it.
Oh, until you get another gas next to it. Then suddenly it's not a vacuum anymore.
No, there is a gradient of vacuum, Ranty. It's measured in torrs, and the stronger the vacuum, that's not true. There is a measurement in torrs of the vacuum of space.
Okay, so what they're saying then, there's a happy medium between the two, where space, a vacuum can exist and the atmosphere can exist.
No, that's what they claim.
And they'll have an equilibrium.
You try and show that to me. Demonstrate that you can have low pressure next to high pressure without entropy taking place.
And they'll imply that there's a thing called a super vacuum. And they'll say, well, space isn't a super vacuum.
But ultimately, Nathan, if you don't mind presenting my screen for a second whilst I just make this point. I was talking before about Hitchins' razor. That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. I'd forgotten about this saying, to be honest. I saw somebody mention it on my most recent video to Arwin. Ultimately, if you're not going to prove that a vacuum can exist with an open lid, then we don't even have to fight it. You've got to prove that a vacuum can exist without an operative lid, and that's what Wumpus cannot do. And I agree with you, Nathan. You can't do it.
George in. He's in the chat.
Come on, George. George needs to be in here. You're mouthing off a lot in chat. Let's see you explain some of this stuff away with evidence.
And Nathan and Anthony, I would verify the tree. I would climb the tree with rope. Let's say a good hefty bundle of rope. Drop the rope when I'm at the top, right? Mark it or cut it, and then when I get back down to the ground, extend out the rope. Now from there, we could actually get a definite measurement of how tall that tree is.
Yeah,
there's no real tangible way to do it.
Well, you can use trig. You can use trig, but the problem is when I was
that's a calculation. That's what I was trying.
When I was at the hill at St. Bees, and everybody was asking how high were you, and the answer was I didn't know. We had to go back with a tape measure and literally measure it, right? Physically measure it. And even then it took us 3 or 4 goes because Al Kay went and did it. He didn't get it right. Miles the Liar Davis, he went and did it. He didn't get it right. We did it twice, didn't get it accurate. We were all getting different measurement, right? So
how long were you guys measuring?
100 feet, call it. But it was down the contour.
And how are you doing it? How are you trying to measure it?
Chucking a tape.
What's that? Oh, why don't you use like one of the wheels, like an actual, like a
measuring a cliff face. Measuring a cliff face.
Oh, I thought you said.
I'll get you a picture. I've got a picture on the slideshow, so if I can catch it, I'll see if I can get it up now.
But everybody was arguing about how high we were, and we couldn't use Google Earth, and then Ordnance Survey wasn't accurate in terms of where it was putting the relief lines. So the answer was, we don't really know. Someone's going to have to go measure it. So 3 of us went and measured it numerous times, and we all got different numbers, and we didn't really know what the height of it was. But the bottom line was this: we measured it, right?
There you go.
And in the end, we came to an answer based on the measurement. Now, you can alternatively use trig. However, you need to know the actual size because you need 3 measurements. You need either 2 angles and a length or 2 lengths and an angle. So if you're going to measure Venus, for example, yeah, you can measure the angular size for the measurement of angle size. But unless you know what the actual size of Venus is, you can't complete the formula because you need 3 things. And you won't have 3, you will only have 2. It's a shame he couldn't keep his mouth shut because I wanted to hear him wiggle his way out of that one.
It's kind of the building 7.
As soon as he went to ad homs, he's already lost. As soon as he went to ad hominem attacks on me, calling me a tosser, that's it. It's like, okay, fine, you've lost. That's your indication to me that you've lost. I know I've already won. I know you can't prove what I'm asking. So calling me a tosser is just my cue to kick him out.
Yeah, but to be fair though, Nate, some people would argue that you called him shut up first.
Called him shut up?
Well, what I'm saying is they would argue that you were rude first.
What exactly does tosser come from?
Wanker. Masturbator.
So a tosser? Okay. Well, wanker, yeah. I'm trying to think of trying to figure out the etymology. Like,
all I'm saying is, at that point, I know he cannot show me what he needs to show to prove that you have gas pressure next to a vacuum, which is a vacuum without a lid on it.
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to do that, and his resort was to say tosser. So it's like, okay, if that's what you're going to do rather than try and give an explanation, then I'm just going to kick you out.
That's why they imply the Kármán line. That's one of the things they wanted in our heads, that there's an actual line there, like at 60 miles or 350,000 feet. There's a line, a physical thing there.
Yeah, it's all nonsense. They can't prove any of it. They just want you to. They build. It's like what Tesla said. They build you a construct of mathematical garb designed to impress and deceive, and it bears no resemblance whatsoever on the real world. None.
Oh, there's some video that has surfaced of Walter Russell and his wife at their house in Virginia, circa maybe the 40s, 50s. And that's just more proof that Tesla actually did exist. Because I have a problem with the fact that there's no video, there's no radio, there's no audio of Nikola Tesla. Now, Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla knew each other. They were friends and had, much to say about each other's work. So, but anyway, I wanted to ask you guys, you ever heard of the coastline paradox?
Coastline paradox? No.
Right. The idea that you can't measure accurately a coastline.
I don't know. I've asked a couple of people who've been out on ships.
It ties into
radar and
can't
stuff.
measure what?
Coastlines. It ties into the idea of the Mandelbrot fractals.
Okay, tell us.
Because basically, every time you measure one more like crevasse, one more like angle inward. This is all these little, ruts, sort of angles towards the center of the body of land. Let me get a better idea of proof of the impossibility is pretty down.
I'm not following you. You're saying because of erosion as you're doing it or something?
Yeah. Okay. Endless nooks and crannies carved into the land. And you can't, every time you measure each one of these nooks and crannies, the measurement gets smaller. So you need to reduce the size of the measuring tool. So hang on, let me just find the general coastline data. Okay. Charts.
Indigo 007 saying there's a number file video on this, apparently.
Yeah, I think there was. There's a video, there's a pretty good documentary, a little mini documentary on that guy Mandelbrot and what he did for IBM and the mathematicians who dealt with this problem.
So, the title of the debate, Nathan, Fake It to Make It. Care to elaborate on that?
Well, that might get changed depending on what gets brought up on the show.
Okay.
About 20 minutes left on this stream. Well, then we'll take a 10-minute break.
I found it interesting. I was having this exact conversation with someone else about the vacuum and pressurized system, and they sent me to space.com or a NASA article or whatnot. And the article argued that that at that point where space starts, that the vacuum doesn't suck. And he argued in his article that vacuums don't suck, not the electronic man-made ones, but rather it's the air pressure that pushes. And I'm reading this article and I'm thinking, you still have the same problem. So instead of the vacuum sucking to equalize, you're arguing that the air pressure would actually push its way into the vacuum. You still have the same problem. It didn't solve anything.
Exactly.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, I don't understand. I just don't get.
Maybe it's like we have infinite atmosphere. Infinite air pressure down here that just keeps pushing and somehow stabilizes it. It's just silly.
you know, because then then the air pressure would be pushing to escape, and then you would have to have a constant flow. So visually it's the same idea as someone saying, well, where's the edge of the ocean, because they're assuming that the water is falling off somewhere. Well, if the water is constantly falling off, you have to have a source that provides enough water to maintain the level. You just have to have this idea of this construct which is what Rumpus was doing. He's arguing a theoretical, metaphysical idea. Well, this is the idea of what happens. It just dissipates, it gets to zero, and then you've got space.
Right.
Basically, it's the issue with all the little angles on the coastline. The degree of cartographic generalization, since the landmass has features at all scales, from hundreds of kilometers in size to tiny fractions of a millimeter, there's no obvious size of the smallest feature that should be measured around, and hence no single well-defined perimeter to the landmass. Various approximations exist when specific assumptions are made about minimum feature. In other words, each time you try to measure the indent of the coastline, you're now going to have to change the measurement, change the way you're measuring, and keep compensating for the next angle inward.
I understand. So what you're saying is you come 10
yeah.
miles off the coast and you go, right, I can see 50 miles of coastline. But every 10 miles it kind of goes in. So let's get a bit closer. So you go, right, let's look at this 10-mile stretch of coastline.
Exactly.
There's all sorts of inlets. Okay, well let's get it down to 5 miles then, and then we can get it really accurate. There's loads of little cracks and indentations in the 5-mile section. Well, let's just do a mile. That'll be small enough. And then by the time you get down to the millimeter, you can see that there's hairline cracks.
Exactly. It's you run into like an infinite measurement situation.
The fractal world is quite beautiful, though. I like the fact that we live in a fractal world.
I love that.
I do too.
It
makes me smile.
I can stare at those videos over and over again. It's just.
Well, people show things with simulacra and say, this means this, that, and the other, or whatever, and you're like, no, that's the way the world works. We live in a fractal world. You know, the fact that things on the microscopic scale look the same as the macroscopic scale is no coincidence. They're all abiding by the same rules. You know, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, whatever one wants to label it. That's just the world of fractals that we live in, and it is beautiful. There's no other word to describe it.
I think we're under this spell that since we're in the age of information, so to speak, we're expecting there to be quantifications of the Earth. You know, that there's got to be a number, there's got to be an answer for it. When I think Alan Watts said it best. He said that the universe is an organism, just like we're an organism. It's just a bigger version of us. Whereas it's a solid object with things moving around in it. He used the term wiggling. Everything's wiggling around inside a larger organism. And that's kind of inside of us and inside of, I don't know. Are we not cool with atoms? I think molecular strands do exist. You don't really need too much of a powerful microscope.
Sorry, I've just read what FE Viking has put. GH's boyfriend, BM, has filed a restraining order against him. Shout out to Bill Miller, the unicorn.
Cool.
I didn't mean to interrupt you then. Sorry, John. Carry on, mate.
So it doesn't, it really doesn't end. It's just a matter of when. This is what my interpretation of enlightenment is. The point at which you can say, I'm okay with not knowing, or I'm okay with that measurement. Because it's the quantification that gets us in trouble. People want to start throwing values at things.
Right, as we've probably got about 10 or 15 minutes left. Branty's around. See if Hopefully you will.
I'm still around, yeah.
So Ranty released a video yesterday. Well, no, technically today. He filmed it yesterday, and essentially he was just monitoring a anti-flat earther. So if anybody thinks flat Earth is a very small corner of the internet, you'd be right. But we also have a offshoot of flat Earth, which is anti-flat Earth, which is even smaller. It's a very small corner of the internet. Anyway, in this little small corner of the internet, we have a chap called Simon Dan. He's made a couple of response videos to us. Bit of an arrogant prick. Not the best videographer in the world. He's alright. But in the last... I'm going to just pass over to you at this point, Ranty, because I'm going to just start laughing.
Okay, so we've got this little creep that sits in a corner.
With a really bad gay haircut.
With a really bad gay haircut, and he has a little globe ball that sits behind him on his shelf, and a couple of magazines, and that's it. And this is all you see of the guy. And he sits there, and I think he's only put about 20 videos out. And it's basically just going after flat earthers for their videos, and he only does like 7 minutes. He's so boring as well. I mean, if you listen to the guy, he's so boring. And anyway, he got on our radar when we were talking about that Ailsa Craig stuff. Do you remember? And he did a response video to that, showed himself up to be a complete idiot. And I noticed his subscribers were rising back then. And I was speaking to Nathan about it, and he says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's a fad. It'll go away." Well, we found out yesterday that it hasn't really gone away. In the last week, I think he's put on, what is it, about 20,000 subscribers in the last week?
Something like that. I mean,
he's had 1.3 million views on one of his videos.
He had less than 1,000 subs 2 months ago.
He did. He had 606 subs 2 months ago. And within 2 weeks, I think he put on 1,000. And in the last week, he's literally gone viral, seriously viral. And I was monitoring it and doing a live stream on it. And I was literally refreshing every minute or so, or every 5 minutes, and seeing that he had another 40 subscribers. And that his videos were getting another 20,000 views within 5 minutes. It was insane. And, just thought we'd bring this to the people's attention, because faking it to make it, it's all well and good saying that you can buy subs and you can buy views and stuff like that, because we know that the flat earthers have done it in the past. And I'm talking specifically to awake souls here, who have absolutely admitted doing that. But to find a ball earther doing it so in your face, I mean, it's literally so in your face. You can go to his channel now, and you can look at his subscriber count, refresh your screen within 10 minutes. I guarantee you'll have another, probably another 100 subs within 10-15 minutes.
Well, let me add to that. I'm going to challenge Sai Mandan. Given that his name is Sai Mandan, that Sai must mean science, right? I'm going to ask you, Sai Mandan, to prove the distance to the sun. Now, I know what you're going to come back with, so I'll preempt what you're going to come back with, which would be the current science. But I want you to demonstrate the procedure, who did it, and how it was done for the distance to the sun. Because we know that Kepler's third law on interplanetary motion states that the parallax is how they did it with the measurement. Globe philosophy. Ranty, are you watching?